So let's talk about church doctrine and pastoral care of LGBT Catholics. First of all, I want to say a couple of things. Number one is, if at some point you feel uncomfortable with this topic, know that it is okay. You are in a journey learning about church doctrine. So, just be patient with yourself. Also, if at some point you find yourself asking, what about the homosexual lifestyle? Or what about pedophiles? I recommend that you visit the webpage and you visit the section titled Myths and Realities, because it is important to identify the preconceived ideas that drive our understanding of church doctrine. And it's important to determine whether those preconceived ideas are myth or reality. So feel free to visit the webpage and visit the section on myths and realities. So now let's talk about church doctrine, shall we? So our Catholic faith and doctrine comes from three main sources: tradition, scripture, the Bible, and the magisterium, which is the Pope, the bishops, etc. And doctrine, church doctrine about LGBT people can be divided in three main categories. The first one is the teaching of the dignity of the human person. The second one is the teaching on violence and discrimination must not be tolerated. And the third is the teaching that all are called to chastity. So let's explain each one of those. Number one, dignity of the human person. This is a cornerstone of Catholic social doctrine. Each human being is made in God's image and likeness. It doesn't matter what's my color, the color of my skin, or my hair, what it looks like. It doesn't matter what our level of education is. It doesn't matter what our socioeconomic status is. Any differentiating characteristic makes absolutely no difference in terms of our own inherent dignity, because we are made in God's image and likeness. We have an inherent dignity that must be respected, and this includes sexual orientation. It doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. You are made in God's image and likeness, and you have this inherent dignity that must be respected. Now, in terms of this first category of doctrine, dignity of the human person, I want to focus on the word person. The very first thing that we need to know when talking about LGBT people is that they are people, that we are talking about persons. We are not talking about some kind of political agenda. We are not talking about some kind of demon. We are not talking about some kind of apocalyptic future. All right, we're talking about people, and that is the very first thing that we need to know and that we need to practice. Jesus, he was 100% God, 100% human, and as a human being who walked on this earth, people followed him. He was always surrounded by a lot of people who wanted to get closer to him. And this was because he saw them as people. We have a lot of examples in the gospel. We have the Samaritan woman. Jesus has this encounter with this woman who, to begin with, in Jesus' time, women were not really considered people. Legally speaking, women, we were more like property that was, exchanged from a father to a husband, and we were seen as property. And men were not supposed to talk to women unless they were their wives or their daughters. Yet Jesus sees this person in front of him and tells this woman, "Give me water, please." And she's absolutely surprised that he's even talking to her. She's absolutely surprised that he is treating her as a person. Now, not only is she a woman, she's a Samaritan, and Jesus wasn't Jewish, so there was beef there. And Jesus didn't care. He didn't see her gender. He didn't see her religion, her heritage. He saw the person in front of him. And this was a transformative experience for the Samaritan woman who became an apostle, who became a witness to Jesus' mission in this earth. And, you know, he went to talk to other Samaritans about Jesus. So when we do this, when we see people as people, first and foremost, this can be a very, very transformative experience for all of us. So this is the very first thing that we need to do. The second main category of church doctrine is that harassment, discrimination, hatred, and violence against homosexual persons, against LGBT people, must not be tolerated. Now let me repeat this. Harassment, discrimination, hatred, and violence against LGBT people must not be tolerated. We all know what happened in Orlando not too long ago. A shooter went into a gay nightclub and he started shooting. He killed 49 people and there were 53 people wounded. This was an attack on the LGBT community. Unlike other attacks, this was an attack that was targeting a specific community. This was a shooting that was targeting a specific community. My LGBT Catholic friends called me a little bit after this happened, and they were sad because they realized they still are a vulnerable community. But it was even worse, and things got worse as the week went by when I got calls from a lot of them asking, "Hey, Junwen, why is it that in my parish it wasn't even mentioned in the homily? Why is it that it wasn't even included in the prayers of the faithful, in our universal prayer? Why is it that in a lot of our parishes no one even acknowledged what happened?" Now, in my parish, we did have a special prayer, but I know it didn't happen everywhere. As the week went by, I remember posting something on one of my my social media outlets, and you know, people started commenting and saying, "Well, you know, they got what they deserved. That's what happens when you choose sinful ways, consequences of their actions," and things like this that made no sense, because they really make no sense. These were people who were killed for no reason. And Catholic doctrine is very, very, very clear on this topic. Violence must not be tolerated. The people who died in Orlando did not choose to die, nor did they deserve to die. Now I want to read to you a couple of documents written by the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. I want to quote a couple of paragraphs. So the first document is a pastoral letter written in 2006 called Ministry to Persons with a Homosexual Inclination, Guidelines for Pastoral Care. And I quote, "We recognize that these persons, LGBT people, have been and often continue to be objects of scorn, hatred, and even violence in some sectors of our society. Sometimes this hatred is manifested clearly. Other times it is masked and gives rise to more disguised forms of hatred." So many of the negative comments that we heard a little bit after the Orlando shootings from the Catholic community were more disguised forms of hatred that we may not be aware we're being hateful, but we need to become aware. We need to become aware of these things. Now I want to quote another document. This is a 1991 letter by the USCCB as well. It is called Human Sexuality, A Catholic Perspective for Education and Lifelong Learning. And I quote, "We call on all Christians, on you, and all citizens of goodwill to confront their own fears about homosexuality, and to curb the humor and discrimination that offend homosexual persons. We understand that having a homosexual orientation brings with it enough anxiety, pain, and issues related to self-acceptance without society bringing additional prejudicial treatment. So let's listen to this call of the Catholic bishops, 1991. We need to confront our own fears, our own ignorance, our own prejudice. Yeah, so that's the second category of church doctrine. So we finally got to the third category of church doctrine, and this is all our call to chastity. Now notice how this teaching is about chastity, not celibacy. A lot of times we hear people say gays have to be celibate, and even though the end result is the same, saying that the teaching is celibacy is wrong, because that means that celibacy only applies to, or this teaching only applies to people who are in the consecrated life, people who have taken vows of celibacy, and gay people, and that is not the case. The teaching is chastity. So what is chastity really? The Catechism defines chastity as the integration of sexuality within the person. Chastity is the integration of sexuality within the person. Chastity is not about not having sex. Chastity basically is about making sure that any sexual act that happens in our lives is integrated with our whole being, our emotions, our thoughts, our plans for the future. And the Catholic Church, church doctrine is that this integration can only happen fully under sacramental marriage. So, for instance, we usually don't think about our parents having sex. We kind of don't like to think about that, but that's how we came to this world. So, for instance, our parents, right? They maybe they are married under the church, man and a woman married under the church. If they love each other, they're having sex, but they're integrating this sexual act with the love for each other, with their thoughts, with their plans for the future, and they are married under the church, and they're faithful to each other, then they are being chaste, even though they are having sex. So chastity is not about not having sex. Chastity is about this integration. Likewise, if we have a married couple, man and a woman, they're sacramentally married, but they're cheating on each other, or one of them is cheating, so that there's no integration of the emotion, the mind, the plans for the future with the sexual act, even though they are sacramentally married, they are not being chaste. So again, chastity is about this integration. And again, Catholic Church says this integration can fully only happen within the context of sacramental marriage. Because sacramental marriage is only between a man and a woman, this is the reason why we say, oh well, then in that case, gay people, if they want to remain chaste, they can't have sex, right? So, like I mentioned at the beginning, the end result is the same as if we said celibacy. But what is not the same is how it applies to us. As I mentioned before, I have been part of a youth group for more than 10 years, and this youth group is actually very successful at, people are very successful at finding boyfriends, girlfriends in this youth group. A lot of them end up getting married under the church. So, the reason why I'm mentioning this is because in our youth group, we teach about chastity, and we teach about a lot of other things. But when a girl and a boy decide to start a relationship, we don't automatically assume that they're having sex. We give them the benefit of the doubt. We say, you know what, we've already let them know what church teaching is, and we're gonna give them the benefit of the doubt that they are being chaste, right? However, with gay people, we're not like that. We as soon as we know somebody's gay, we don't even know if they have a partner. We're already assuming they're sinning. We're already assuming they're having sex, and that's where there's that disparity, because the teaching that applies to both situations is exactly the same. Now, even if I was to find out that, the boyfriend girlfriend couple in my youth group are indeed having sex, we still love them, we still accept them. We would never tell them you're gonna go to hell and you're gonna burn in the fire of hell. However, with gay people, we do that. Now, not all of us, but in general, there's a lot of people who do that and who say that once they find out somebody has a partner, and it's wrong, because the teaching that applies to one and the other is exactly the same. Yet we are more merciful. We have a certain pastoral sensitivity to heterosexual couple. This is where there's a disparity. Finally, I would like to say a couple of things about chastity and same-sex couples. We know that church doctrine is, marriage is only between a man and a woman, and that's settled doctrine as of this moment that I'm speaking to you. This doctrine is based on the belief that people who are having a same-sex relationship are going against how they were created by God. So basically they're doing this because of other reasons, but it is a choice. They're choosing to be with someone that they are not naturally inclined to have this emotional, mental, spiritual, romantic connection with. So what's at the center of this discussion is whether you choose to be LGBT or whether you are born that way. Church, the same as government, they are institutions that exist to conserve the stability of society. That's one of the main roles of these two institutions. So both church and government don't change overnight. And if they do change, it's because there's some more substantive reason. So for instance, at some point in history, church teaching was that the earth was flat and the sun revolves around the earth, and then Galileo came and said, you know what, the earth actually revolves around the sun, and you just have to observe the stars and see this, and the earth actually it moves and it's not flat. So at this point the church wasn't ready to say this is true until more substantive scientific research, I guess you could say, came about, and that's when this doctrine changed. Am I saying doctrine is going to change? I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is that when you talk to LGBT people and when you listen to their stories, they can tell you, this is how I was born, this is how I was made. Now, you may not agree with it, but the point is that to them, to people who are in a same-sex relationship, they are not going against God, they are not sinning. Actually, they're honoring that chastity, they are honoring that integration of their sexuality with every other aspect of themselves, their emotions, their plans for the future, when they are with a person of the same sex, because they are wired to have this romantic connection with people of the same sex. Now, we may not know why or what's God's purpose for this, but they do not choose to go against church doctrine. to them, this is not a choice. And trust me, if you were LGBT, there's no way you would choose to be LGBT. You wouldn't choose to go through that discrimination and all of that emotional turmoil of having to struggle with people's judgment, because that's the real struggle of LGBT people. It's really the judgment and the discrimination and being discredited. So it is likely that after having talked about chastity, the next question in your head is, wait, what about the Bible? What does the Bible say about this topic? So let's talk about the Bible for a second. And here I have my Bible. It's in Spanish because that's my first language. So what is the Bible? The Bible is a collection of books. It is a library of books written by men, inspired by the Holy Spirit. That's what the Bible is. Now, we have to remember that we are Catholics. Catholics are not fundamentalists. Fundamentalist religions, they tend to read the Bible in a literal way. So exactly what I'm reading, that's it. That's it. That's all I need to know. I just memorize whatever I'm reading and I'm good to go. We as Catholics are called to do an educated reading of the Bible. What does this mean? It means that you have to take formation classes, Archdiocesan formation classes about the Bible. It means that if you have a chance to take a class at the college level about the Bible, you do it, because it's going to help you understand what you're reading. When we read the Bible, we Catholics read the Bible, we have to know, first of all, who wrote this book that I'm reading? Who is the author? Who is the author's intended audience? What type of book am I reading? Is it a historical book? Is it some kind of theological story? What am I reading? What type of book am I reading? What is the historical context? What is the cultural context of this book, right? When we know all of these things, then we are able to understand what we are reading better. I want to talk about the story of Sodom and Gomorrah because it's a story that we often hear. It's about God destroying a city of homosexuals because of homosexuality. So what is this story really about? So I'm going to talk briefly about it. We have a story about God who's about to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah because of the inhabitants' wickedness. And he sends two angels. And these two angels come into the city, and Lot greets them, and Lot tells them, you know what, you can spend the night in my house. And they tell him, oh, don't worry, we'll just stay here on the street. And Lot tells them, no, please stay at my house. So they go into his house, and at this point, all of the men who inhabit the city come to Lot's house, and they knock at the door, and they tell Lot to bring the two men outside because we want to know them. So when we see this word in the Bible, we want to know, if it says, I want to know your daughter, it doesn't mean, hello, nice to meet you, how are you? It means, I'm about to have sex with this person. I want to have sex with this person. Now, if we think about this isn't a story about a couple who are about to have sex, who love each other and they're about to have sex. This is a story about a group of men, all of the men in the city, which means that most of them were not homosexual, because the estimate is that we have from a 6 to a 10% of homosexual population. So here we're talking about 100% of the men. So most of them heterosexual. They come to Lot's door and they want to rape these two men. This story is about something as wicked as gang rape, as horrible as gang rape. Okay? And at this point, Lot tells the men at his door, he tells them, I can give you my daughters, right? Because in Lot's time, women were worth less, so it was less of a tragedy, I guess you could say, even though it's equally horrible. And this men say, no, we want the two men inside your house. This story is about showing these two foreigners, these two vulnerable people, who is the boss here, right? Just like in prisons, we see gang rape not because people are homosexual, but because it's a way of letting the new person know, we are the boss here. You are nobody. You have no power. You are powerless in our territory. That's what the story is about. It is about gang rape. It is about a lack of hospitality, a wickedness in these people's hearts. So I don't want you to just believe what I'm saying just to believe it. I want you to continue taking classes, to learn from people who have taken the time to get their master's degrees, their PhDs on this topic. But I wanted to give you just an introduction. Whenever it comes to the Bible, it's important that that you take classes before using any text to further any type of discrimination. What about the catechism? What about the catechism? A lot of times we are invited to give a talk at different prayer groups or whatnot about homosexuality, and the first thing that we do is we refer to the catechism of the Catholic Church, and if we go into the section that talks about homosexuality, we are going to see that it says it's intrinsically disordered, right? So then we go into the groups and we preach and we say homosexuality is intrinsically disordered, but there's a couple of things here. When we talk about the catechism, we have to realize that it was not written for normal people like you and me. The catechism is written by and for people who have a certain philosophical, who have formation in philosophy, for priests, for bishops, and a lot of the terms that we find in the catechism are not what we think they are. So when we hear the term intrinsically disordered, the very first thing that comes to mind is a mental disorder. But this is not a book about psychiatry or psychology. This is a book that has a lot of philosophical terms, and this is one of them. When we talk about intrinsically disordered, basically it's a philosophical term referring to this sexual act, whatever the act might be that it's referring to, is not in the order which is ideal, right, in the church. So the order would be, you have a boyfriend, girlfriend, you have no sex with them, then you get engaged, no sex, then you get married under the church, and then you can have sex. That's the order. So any sexual act that is not in this order, we could say it's intrinsically disordered. Now, what else does the catechism say is intrinsically disordered? The catechism says, for instance, that masturbation is intrinsically disordered. Now, I think that most people watching this video would fall into that category of intrinsically disordered if we were to use the catechism this way, which is not how we're supposed to use it, right? A lot of times it's used as a bullet, right? A bullet, this word of intrinsically disorder is a bullet that I can use to kill the spirit of an LGBT person. But maybe out of ignorance we don't realize that this term intrinsically disordered applies to many other scenarios that might apply to most of us. So we have to stop using the catechism as the terms in the catechism as bullets, and we have to educate ourselves. Last but not least, let's talk about pastoral care, shall we? So Pope Francis has called on all of us to reflect on God's mercy. We are still in the year of mercy. It's almost over, but there is a reason why he did that, and it's because he wants us to know more about mercy and to practice it. So what is mercy? A lot of times when we talk about mercy, we talk about some kind of compassion, some time of forgiveness to someone who has hurt us, and someone that we can punish, but instead of punishing this person, I choose not to punish them, and I choose to be merciful. The problem with this definition is that when we see mercy this way, we put ourselves above everyone else, right? So because I am merciful, because I'm this merciful person, I forgive you, right? This is a problem. That's not what mercy is about. It's not about feeling that we're better than other people. Mercy, and I want to use the definition, the etymological definition, using the word in Spanish, misericordia. It comes from two words in Latin, one that means misery and the other one that means heart. So mercy, misericordia, is feeling the other person's pain or misery in your own heart. Feeling a person's pain in your own heart. And it is out of this pain, feeling it in your own heart, that you are compassionate. Not because you're better, but because you feel their pain. So how can you feel the pain of someone you don't know? How can you feel the pain of someone you disagree with? How can you feel the pain of someone that you just don't, you would rather not have to deal with? So Pope Francis has talked to us about a couple of things that we need to start practicing. He has said that we need to start being, number one, a church of encounter, and number two, a listening church. So being a church of encounter means that I, as a minister, as a youth minister, I'm going to encounter each person, including LGBT people, exactly where they are. Exactly where they are, I'm going to serve them, and I'm going to love them, and I am going to have this encounter with them. I'm going to become their friend. I'm going to get to know them exactly where they are. I'm not going to wait until they're perfect. I'm not going to wait until they are the people I think they should be. I'm not going to wait until they do what I think they should do. I'm going to encounter them exactly where they are, whatever part of their journey they're in. That's where I'm going to encounter them. And the second thing that Pope Francis has told us we need to do is to be a listening church. What does this mean? That we have to start listening to people that we don't understand. Not to listen just to give a response or to make a judgment, but just learn from their experience. Listen to learn. Remember that we're all human beings, that we're still learning, and that God's grace is something that we can learn through the experience of other people. And what better than people we don't usually understand or don't agree with? If we're able to listen, to be this listening church, then we'll be able to love and to offer this pastoral care to all people, regardless of whether we agree with them or not. So these are a couple of tools that we need to study, that we need to practice, that we need to pray about, that we can use in pastoral care with LGBT Catholics. Now, as we become a listening church and we start listening to stories and you start becoming friends with LGBT people, you're going to hear a variety of stories, okay? Not all stories are the same. You're going to hear stories of people who have chosen to remain chaste. You will find stories of people who have partners, and you will find that they can be equally holy, and it's going to be absolutely mind-blowing, and you're not going to understand why at the beginning, but you're gonna be able to see stuff that you may not be able to see right now when you get to actually listen to stories. You will find a great variety of stories. Not because you have heard the story of one gay person means every gay person is the same. You will also find the stories of bisexual people who are in this continuum of sexual orientation, who can have that emotional, spiritual, and physical romantic connection with both sexes. These are bisexual people. You might encounter a lot of them who might say, you know what, I was able to change my sexual orientation because they are able to have this connection with both sexes. So it's important to listen to the stories as well. But regardless of what you hear, what's most important is to be loving to every single person that you encounter. So, speaking of stories, I want to share my story with you because I'm hoping it will help you start this process of discerning how you can serve LGBT Catholics better in your own ministry. So I want to tell you a little bit more about my own story. I've always known I am different ever since I was, my very first memories. Now, when I was a little kid, I didn't really think about what that meant. I just knew I was different. It was around the age of 11 that I discovered I liked somebody. I liked a girl, and just like you, at some point in your life, started liking someone, out of nowhere. And that's exactly how it happened to me. I had never experimented any type of anything. I just knew that I liked this person. But I never told anybody, so I kept it to myself. And it was until the age of 17 that I decided to tell my mom, because I wanted to be more honest with her. I wanted to have better communication with her. Our communication wasn't that good, and I knew it had a lot to do with the fact that I was keeping this important part of my myself to myself. So I decided to talk to my mom about this topic, and she didn't know how to react to it. So, like any good parent, she tried to do what was best. It is often said that when children come out of the closet, the parents go into the closet, which means that when the child or the son or daughter decides to talk about this topic, that's when the parents don't want to talk about it, because the child has had their whole lives to deal with all of the questions of what's going to happen in my future, whereas for the parent, all of a sudden, something is happening that they were not even considering at all about their child. So it's a difficult process for parents, and my mom didn't know what to do. She tried to do what was best, and she sent me to this Jóvenes group, to this young adult ministry, for me to go to a retreat, maybe hoping they would cure me of whatever it was that was going on. And I thank her for sending me to this group, because I lived a retreat that was the most wonderful retreat. I learned so much about Jesus, and I found this treasure, and I found this friendship and this community, and I did not want to lose that friendship and that community. For that reason, I decided to take some time to learn more about myself, to get to know myself better, to get to know God better, to learn what the church says about this topic, to learn what science says about this topic, what other churches say about this topic, to discern my own vocation, to discern basically all of the questions that all of us, gay or straight, have to discern when we are growing up. So I have been involved with young adult ministry, as I mentioned before, for about 10 years. I have been involved in Catholic radio. I have been involved in formation courses. I have done a lot of things. I've also done a lot of social justice ministry in topics such as immigration, mass incarceration, social economic disparity, and things like this. And I have focused my time on helping the poor and vulnerable, on doing what the gospel calls us to do, which is love, especially the poor and vulnerable. It was until about 2 years ago that I felt this really, really deep call to talk about this topic again with my family, to start doing ministry with and for LGBT Catholics, such as myself. I had this conversation with my mom, and it was very difficult at the beginning. I had met some people from Always Our Children, the support group for parents and family of gay and lesbian persons, and I went to one of their meetings and I said, I need help. I don't know if there's gonna be a place for me in the church once I have this conversation again, and once I start doing ministry. I don't know if there's a place for me, and it was very sad, and it was a very depressing, very dark moment of my life, just trying to determine whether I should stay in church. But they helped me through this process. They helped me remember that God loves me, and they were there for me in this moment. And thanks to them is that I'm still here doing ministry. So I had this conversation with my mom. It was the best conversation I've ever had with her. It was about 5 hours long. She listened to me for 2 hours. Just listened, which had never happened this way, and asked questions, and I responded to these questions. And then I listened to her for about 2 hours, just listening and just asking questions as well. And it was the best conversation we've had in our entire lives. I would say it was a moment of healing in my relationship with my mom, and I want every LGBT Catholic to experiment and to have these moments of healing. And that is why I'm here, because I know that in our families there is a lot of rejection, and I know there's a lot of we don't know how to be good Catholics while still being loving to our LGBT Catholic or LGBT family members. So that's why I'm here. I want to help other people heal in their relationships with their families. So having that conversation with my mom and doing ministry since, it's the best thing that has ever happened to me. I have been able to meet other LGBT Catholics, people who are in different parts of their journey, and we've been able to create a community where we all support each other, and that's what we're trying to do here. Just make sure that there's this community everywhere, that people won't leave church just because there's no safe space for all of us, whether and this includes everyone. I have LGBT Catholic friends who are chaste. I have LGBT Catholic friends who have their partners, and it's important to have ministry for everyone, including the parents, right? The parents also need this support. The parents need to have spaces where they can also discuss how they're feeling, because they also feel guilty, and they're constantly being told you're wrong whether you do this or you do that. It doesn't matter, whether you're too conservative or too liberal, you're wrong, and they also need that support. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my story as well, hoping that it will be the beginning of a journey of listening sessions to other LGBT Catholics and their families. For me, being LGBT has been a gift. It has been a blessing, because this journey has helped me become a more compassionate, a more loving, a more merciful person. And I can only hope and pray that I can continue learning from Jesus, and that I can become more like him. So if you're an LGBT Catholic out there watching this video, please know that God loves you unconditionally, and that there is a place for you in the church. And if you, like me, are doing ministry, or if you're at a point where you're losing hope, please do not lose hope. Please know that you have a community, that you're not alone, and that you can also make a difference in somebody else's life, and bring hope and love into other people's life as well. So thank you very much for watching this video, and peace be with you.